Golf. Game of dualities. Maybe the worst sports to watch, or the most mentally exhaustive one with anxiety with the ball getting close to the hole. Look, it's not the sport of the common man, soccer or basketball. It's not like the adrenaline of having sports such as the side of CTE like football or even combat sports, but I think it's one of those sports that we can agree, video games for golf, pretty fun as hell. Running the green with 18 holes is one of those things that you have to be mentally prepared for, physically and mentally, or crash out during the process. So I'm here to be your cat, to give you a few tips on things that I would say are peak golf in a lot of ways. And that would be with one particular game about the sport. Are we talking about how great arcade golf games are? No. Are we talking about how great of courses in Mario Golf? Not really. But there is one golf game I feel like that the ones that you play make you really hate playing golf games. And that twist is with a pink ball named Kirby. I'm sure you're aware of who's Kirby. I even did a review of one of his beloved games, Kirby Era. But I'd say this, that Hell Laboratory threw a curveball when I discovered this as a kid. At the time of me discovering the Kirby franchise as a little kid and knowing the past games that he had, Kirby was in a really weird position for me because as much I love those Kirby games that I grew up with around the GBA, I was always fascinated to see all the other. I was more curious about the pinball game out of any. But then once I seen this, I was just more questioning of Kirby golf? Huh? Because listen, I was perfectly fine of seeing Kirby destroying a literal gods and saving planets, but golf? This is great. We leave golf to Mario, okay? But there's actually a more interesting thing about the circumstances and the climate of when this game was released. Heading back into the 90s, there's a lot of ways that you can kind of describe the whole circumstances and the situation of the console war at that time. Now, mind you, I wrote a very long page worth of content to kind of get the whole thing set across, but I'm just gonna freeball it with this one. And pretty much describe it as this. Heading into the 1990s with the Genesis releasing, Sega was contending on trying to get the audience that Nintendo had, but going for different directions. And in that direction, it was gravitating what Americans like. And if you don't know about Americans, Americans do like their sport. We are a competitive bunch in a lot of ways. Or at least were. And so in this way, it's really more interesting to see how everything else was just checking out. You've seen games like Joe Montana, football, you had tons of different basketball titles, and even baseball titles that were releasing on Sega Genesis at that time, and even golf. But knowing me and knowing that I like golf games, I will tell you this, that I think Nintendo had just better golf games in general, even on the NES, compared to the Genesis title. To put it in this way, Sega was biting a piece of the shit that Nintendo had by catering to a much older demographic. And that older demographic would probably have a little brother involved. And so, you had a 2 for a price of 1 in that. And in this way, Nintendo wasn't really treated as the little brother console a lot of times, but a lot of times it just had the notion of either being kiddie. Even around that time, even before the time of the PlayStation, Nintendo was just considered the kiddie console in a lot. And that's just the notion that it just had. And even when Nintendo had their loyalists at that time, a lot of them that were interested in these sports titles wouldn't get that Sega style approval. And it wasn't that these games were bad, it was just that it wasn't the same thing compared on the Genesis. To put it in this perspective, the Super Nintendo had to get the third-party support, while Sega Genesis already took the third-party and they were just having the run with it with the established. It was going to be a very hard task for Kirby Dream Course to really be stand out as a sports game, because it's in the simple fact, it's a Kirby game first. So, how does Kirby Dream Land turn out then, if we know all of this? Well, let's take a look for ourselves. Well, with us Eagle Screechers, Americans didn't care for the plot for the most part. It spun into the manual, but anyways, with the Dreamlog back at peace, it hammered its crew attached to the stars. They gazed up and suddenly vanished. The rumor is King Dedede's back at it again, and it wants the stars' beauty just for himself. And Kirby sets out to retrieve the stars and heads up to the king's floating castle. But to retrieve the stars back, he'll need to recover them one by one from their servants. That's laying trap. With a simple plot like that, in a simple game and the moments after doing research, or let's actually play this. Well, of course, it's a golf game in mine. It's just with the pink puff ball, but you're thinking to be like the kid's first golf game because of the open nature of these stages. And well, you would be absolutely wrong. You're making a terrible mistake if you think this is going to be kids' first golf games. Listen, I'd rather let them play NES Open Tour around that time. Or even now, I would even tell them to play one of the Mario Golf games. This game can be brutal. And it's not brutal in the sense of it being immensely hard, it's just in the infuriating nature of this game. Because the objective is to eliminate all the enemies until the last one, and that is the final hole to retrieve it. There is no par, there is no bogeys, eagles, but hole-in-ones are included. And so with each level having 8 different courses, it more becomes a way of optimizing your strategy. Because if you go willy-nilly, crackles are just going to do this to you all the time if they're in these levels. But things are different in this one, especially with golfing mechanics around this time in general. Instead of just having multiple clubs, Kirby only has 3 moves to actually go and do something. It is chip shots, standard shots, and long shots. By pushing the D-pad up or down, you will be given a chance of doing one of these cardinal moves, and then turning the direction. With the biggest difference is that when you press the D-pad up and you're going for these chip shots, you can actually change the speed on either being more topspin or a backspin comparing to the other ones, because guess what? You can't do that the other. But with the other ones that you actually have the ability to curve the ball. Curving the ball does have its own benefits and features, especially when you're going for the long shots. It really just depends on the situation for each of these, but most of the times that if you're smart enough, a lot of these can be really used to your benefit, especially with the top shots. If you know the right spot to put enough backspin into it, you can land perfectly and get better opportunities. You may have noticed by the HUD, but Kirby actually gets abilities. Yes, there are abilities in this game. This wouldn't be a Kirby game without something strange like this happening to make things interesting. And by the time of 1994, you had a lot of Kirby staple abilities in these games that were really more or less just really interesting puzzles in this that would make any player that likes Kirby to find these more fun than anything. And as a golf fan, you'd probably find these more interesting to just see how these work more than anything. Of course, you have your staples like your spike abilities, your stone abilities, and your ice sliding abilities. Of course, that if you can just imagine what these would do, know how these would. And of course, you would get something like high jump, where your ability is that you get a second jump, or even just in the simple way of just burn, in which it just goes super crazy fast. And even you get some strange ones like the UFO, where you can just glide around and hit the enemies and then land wherever you like. But of course, like me, that you're probably going to fall because you can just never figure out where. I think especially looking at this game, that there's a lot of things that are really fun about it, and it is because of the power-ups that it gives a second form of nature with it, that it makes this game more challenging compared to a lot of other golf games. Even around that time, well, a lot of them were going for this realistic approach, or even taking the basics of it and putting their own twist. Even looking later on into the N64 era with with Mario Golf, you can definitely see the charms and differences, especially in philosophy, from HAL and Camelot. Even with later entries like Mario Golf, Speed Rush, Mario Golf, Star Rush, I can honestly feel like with these characters having their own abilities and not just having an arsenal of them, it kind of just hurts the detriment of it. And even comparing to this game, it kind of just made things more disinterested, because of course you're gonna have to gravitate one character. If they have an ability that you don't like, you're either gonna have to bite your teeth or use that other character. At least in this one, that this actually gives you a genuine reason to be hoping that the power-ups that you like are in there, because guess what? If they're in there, it's going to be more fun for you to play. And of course, with a game like this, there's also that course levels. There's 8 of them in each of them, and so you're going to be having your 3 lives into them and trying to survive them. And this game just becoming more as a puzzle that have moving functions instead of just a golf course going around. Of course, there's going to be levels that are just going to be more confusing than anything before you actually take your chances on. And once you complete these levels, they'll take account of how many shots it took you to finish the course. Hi, this is Editing Jarf. I just wanted to say that I didn't have any footage of the extra courses, but there are extra courses in this game. I just never brought it on my script. And yeah, so pretty much like once you get a gold medal in each of these courses, you unlock the extra version of it. It's literally just a remaking of the level. You're just starting at a different position and you have different enemies on it. Much harder, but it's still fun. I think it's on the Switch, on the special edition on the SNES side, but let me resume. I also think that what would be more enjoyable, especially in this game, would be the fact that they would have more of a challenge where, you have to finish with this enemy. But yeah, it doesn't have any of those, but it's more on the challenge that you make for it, especially when you're seeing that to get these gold medals is a lot of challenge, and oh my god. Telling you this, if you think you're that good at golf games, try to hit birdies on all of them. It's hard to do, and it's extensively hard to pretty much cut your shots in half and do it again, because that's how you're going to get gold. And let's actually talk about one of the extra modes in this game, which is 2-player. Now, a lot of golf games have 2-player. A lot of golf games have 4-player. A lot of people can enjoy when golf is just for fun like that, because it's everyone just enjoying themselves and whatnot. But in Kirby's Dream Course, 2-player can be really determined as what I like to call a very competitive game of fuck you-isms. If you've heard how golf players are when they're raging out, this is going to be your version of raging out if you play this game with someone that knows how to. Because guess what? This is where friendships are broken. You thought Mario Party was bad when you steal somebody's star? Imagine what you can do in this game, especially when you know that person is doing it on purpose. And well, 2-player mode is simply just Kirby versus Kirby. This is Kirby. Isn't he adorable? But in the simplest sense, there's 4 different courses that you and your opponent will be taking part in which that y'all will be capturing these stars. Y'all thought these stars were just for the story, huh? No, these stars are meant for you and your opponent to score each other. And so, it's the same objective as in the 1-player mode. You eliminate all the enemies, and then the final one becomes the hole, and then you go and finish it. But there is the placing of stars. If you hit the star first, that's your star. But then once your opponent hits it, it can be theirs. And so it becomes more of a challenge of eliminating the enemies and making sure that your opponent doesn't steal your star before going into the hole. And so courses are simply as it can be up to 3 stars being available that you have to eliminate, and which the final one becomes a 2-star to finish the hole. And so you really think that you're good with your top shots and back shots? Not back shot, god. Top spins and backspins. You're going to be learning how to get those in and getting into the hole. Because I'll tell you this, when you got 2 people that are super close to it and this happens to you, the controllers will be broken. Controllers will be broken. And especially looking at these level designs are actually more interesting in the far part of these are actually really good levels for 1-player, but as a 2-player, it's more interesting and challenging in that way, especially with the Mr. Brightside and Mr. Shine changing the stars every time. Listen, you want to know pain? Is when you think that you completed the hole, when you sweep and then they just do this and they finish the hole. Like, it is more aggravating than anything when that happens. And so now that you're probably pretty experienced, you've probably done all the courses, what is DDD doing up there? And well, King DDD just has a huge robot up there, and all you have to do is just keep hitting him as Kirby. And yes, I've recorded this, and it was one of the most simplest bosses that you can ever think of for such a game that is filled with so much depth. Yeah, just keep hitting him, don't get hit by his little robots, don't lose all your lives, and boom, you beat the game. Of course, you can go for the gold records out of pride, but yeah, this is pretty much just Kirby's Dream Course. And before I finally get out of all of this, let's actually talk about something that's more interesting of what I did during my research. Now, before I let you know about this, you gotta learn about what is the Satellaview. The Satellaview was basically a satellite service in Japan that was for game services that would rotate on and going for the SNES, and even for, if I'm correct, at the N64 at some parts. There was one game that was used as the Satellaview games, and that was Specialty Shot, in which we in America and around the world, we wouldn't know what this was for the longest time. We knew that this was part of the Satellaview, but we just never understood what it was. It just felt like a Kirby Dream Course clone out of anything, just without the Kirby element. And well, we'd be wrong, because this would actually be Kirby Dream Course in 1992 before it had the whole Kirby make. I think the notable differences is just besides the overall gameplay and level is that the goal is just to simply shoot the shot into the hole, and it had nothing to do with enemies at this, where In the Kirby game, of course, what we've just been talking about, just destroying enemies and reaching the hole. However, despite this, the game's biggest sharing of the similarities is the controlling of being the ball. And now, I can even put my own theories into it. I think that if anything, Nintendo probably looked at this and they probably said that this wasn't going to really be a selling point. And so they probably said to themselves, screw it, put Kirby in it. Why? Because it's going to be different enough that it's going to set itself out, that Kirby fans are going to get it. Or it might have just been someone that was tinkering around with it, found it more fun to actually destroy enemies than just trying to reach the hole, and then they probably got permission to actually just use Kirby. But who knows? Overall, Kirby Dreams Course is one of those games that doesn't sound like a good idea, but yet it comes out in a way that really makes people, me, that would have never played it, until somebody gave the controller to actually appreciate what this game really did for itself. Is it really one of the greatest golf games though? Personally, I don't think it's one of the greatest golf games, but it is definitely one of those golf games that I feel like every player that likes golf should at least give it a try, because the simple fact that there's a lot of things in this that is more challenging than you think it would be. Of course, you have games like the old Tiger Woods series where it had that sense of challenge because of just it being realistic, and even Mario Golf games where the challenge was getting through the wacky courses. Kirby Dream Course really sets itself apart just for the simple fact that it's not just a Kirby game, but it brings so much depth into it that I'm actually more surprised of how much I found in it than not in it. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed this video and what I had to say about this game. I just wanted to simply say thank you for watching, and I hope that you have a good rest of your day, or if you're watching this at night, good night. Hope you leave a like, comment, and whatsoever. And I just wanted to say, for the next big project that I've been posting around on the community notes and even on Patreon, by the way, I have a Patreon, is the simple fact that that's going to be the biggest project that I'm going to be doing. So as I'm getting everything else in line, I'm probably going to have something beforehand so I can put a little bit more focus onto it, because I still have to get the extracting of videos. But nonetheless, things are going in a pace that I'm comfortable with. As usual, Linktree has all my socials and the Patreon. I have nothing else to say. So, goodbye.